Greetings, great people, oh great Abyssinian people. The solution to Africa's problem is unity, and this is how we will achieve it. Around 1964, Julius Nyerere from Tanzania, he had a brilliant idea. He planned with Jomo Kenyatta from Kenya and Milton Obote from Uganda that right after they gained independence, they would join all three countries together to form one big country. It was truly a brilliant idea and the beginning of reconnecting the continent. Unfortunately, after they gained independence, the plan never materialized. As a result, today, in the grand scheme of world power, all three individual countries remain just as powerless in all areas against their white oppressors as they were before independence. The total extent of their power ended with each other. It ended at their neighbor's border, who was just as powerless. What a disgrace. If these three countries are joined and become one and maintain the mentality and objectivity of why they join, Africa today, 50 years later, would be a different place. So why did things fall apart for this far-reaching project? Well, I don't know the details, but in retrospect, we know that Kenyatta and Obote both fell in love with power. So as soon as independence came, everything fell apart. 10 years later, Obote was overthrown by Idi Amin. And as far as Kenyatta is concerned, he must be Mandela's father. He told the slave master to keep what they stole, leaving the people to suffer. He was now in his 70s and just wanted to relax with some money, much of which he got from Israel in his later years. And this is the Israel who gave Botha the Uzi submachine gun to test, and we know who he tested it on. Surely, England must also have a very big role in the failure of that unity agreement. Well, now is the time to do it right. To do it with leaders who think along the same lines. Leaders who are ready to form a coalition for black power. If some can join with the slave master's children and then go to bed at nights, others are there who are willing to join with themselves in an African liberation program. There's no question about that. The African Union is just a mirage for African unity. Now, to make our unity plan work, the agreement should only be between two leaders at a time, never more than two. It must be between two people who understand the culture and the value of power for Africans in Africa. After the first two countries joins, the third country will be easier to convince by this bigger image of himself next door. This is the only process to unify and grow the country bigger and bigger at every addition. We must understand that the African Union, which was designed, produced and financed by Europeans and other outsiders, it is useless to unify the continent. This solution concept is very simple to implement using the right mentality. Part 1 of this momentous journey is for one leader in Africa to agree with himself that he would like to merge his or her country with another like-minded leader and become one new country with two states. Both will be renamed with a new name that reflects their heritage and their traditions. Now, there are more than one leader who is interested in real independence and real power. These leaders would love to tell the slave master's children where to go, but cannot do so due to their individual state of powerlessness. They know the colonial powers of yesterday still control their economies and the direction of their existence today. But anytime one president agree with himself and say, yes, in the interest of Africa, and African unity, I will join my country with another and become one. That will be the end of the stranglehold placed on us by white people. So the first hurdle is, who will be the first president to seek out another president for this partnership in black power? Who? This president must now convince one of his neighbors or reason with one who requires no convincing that by joining their two countries, both people would benefit immensely in economics, in size, population, etc., but most of all, in security. Every sensible president in what is now known as Africa know that they can be crushed, or they should know that they can be crushed overnight by the smallest European nation, never mind the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance, or NATO, which is the total sum of their military power. Most countries in Africa are landlocked, so each has about 3 to 5 countries to choose from to start this unity process. After that, with the assistance of our creators, the universe will send out enough positive vibrations to cause a three-peat of this process and add a third neighbor, making them even bigger, more influential, and more powerful. So, the very big question is, what about those leaders who are not interested in this idea? What if a foolish African lives next door? One who is greedy and impressed with white people's things. How will we deal with people who possess the mindset of a Mobutu from Congo, a Kampore from Burkina Faso, a Kotoka from Ghana, Butalezi from the Zulu nation, or Shangarai, who is the opposition leader in Zimbabwe? How do we deal with these people? There is only one way. If these people are standing in the way of Africa's liberation because of fear, personal gain, or for any reason whatsoever, then a new election will have to be called, because he or she must be removed from office as soon as possible by any means necessary. If the job proves too big for us, we may have to make an emergency call to the Creator for assistance in removing these traitors from power. So whether they fall ill and die from a new plague, have a fatal accident, or die by other means approved by the Creator, nothing must be off the table as far as removing these individuals from power. Nothing must be off the table as far as that is concerned. The days of eating and drinking and growing fat with the slave master's children and then coming to us to sweeten us with talk, those days must be brought to an end, a final end. Those who are guilty of treason, those who act on behalf of the slave master's children, must not be allowed to put another stone where it does not belong. And that's what they will do at the very first opportunity if they are captured and imprisoned. As such, the removal of the slave master's influence through them must be permanent. It must be permanent. Let the slave master find a new replacement or a spy. And if that spy does not understand that their allegiance must be to the people who elected them and not to the former kidnappers, their term in office will also be terminated. If one country, the Sudan, can split into two because of differences which are not African in nature, then two countries with an African mind can become one because of similarities. A so it go, or a so we have to make it go. When leaders see real power building next door before their very eyes, starting with two sharp, fearless leaders who understand that the people are one, and in this case one is bigger than two, the momentum can only grow, because deep down the African people really want unity. They want unity because it's our only solution. The African people are sick and tired of being used and abused by everybody with no end in sight. When Greece left, we thought we were safe till we saw the Romans. Today, as the West prepares to leave, they are being replaced by China. And these Chinese replacements have China's interests as their priority, not ours. There is a Jamaican proverb that says, one cocoa, full basket. This means, if Ghana join with Burkina Faso, little Togo next door have no choice. They have to join as well, one way or another, because it just makes more sense in all aspects of the region and their place in it by helping to fill the African basket. And since all African countries have been and still are being exploited, in time the act would catch on even between countries who have a different colonial invader. So whether the invader come from France, Spain, Germany, England, Holland, Portugal, Italy, all of them is the same. They were just as brutal and all of them were savages. This 1-1 I&I strategy for unity is very simple, very low-keyed, especially in this environment where political complexity is expected, even created. This I&I 1-1 strategy would utilize far less fanfare and the outcome would still be of historic significance and value. If Cecil Rhodes can leave foreign and put together Zambia and Zimbabwe and run it productively for years, that means it is doable. We can do it too, and more, and everything is already in place. Everything except a leader to put forward a workable initiative. When we have about 5 or 6 countries turning into one within 5 years, we would then be ready to outline our anticipated program with Amilcar Cabral and others like him at the center. We would do this free from fear because there is enough sleeping soldiers in the land of the slave master who are just waiting for something to do. They are just waiting to avenge their ancestors if the West should kill those leading this I&I African strategy program. Unlike Nelson Mandela from South Africa, who told white folks it was okay to keep what they stole, Zimbabwe's leader, President Mugabe, says the opposite. Subsequently, he is on bad terms with Europeans. President Mugabe rightly claims that vast tracts of prime Zimbabwean land occupied by Europeans was not acquired legally. It was stolen. It was stolen after the owners were chased away and those who resisted were killed. Subsequently, it must be returned. Now, does President Mugabe have a neighbor whose country and people suffered the same fate at the hands of white folks? Or maybe the question should be, is there a place in Africa that the Africans did not suffer the same fate of losing their land to invaders from Europe who killed them if they resisted? Well, there is no such place. So, is there a neighbor who is ready and willing to increase the power of black people in Africa? The road to African unity rests on individuals, I&I, not on those bodies that make up the African Union. That group is under the spell and management of white folks. African unity will never happen because of this group, but in spite of it. So what will the slave master do when he finds out what we're doing? He can do whatever he wants. Remember, we have enough Africans in the lands of the slave master to physically persuade him not to oppose our development because there will be serious consequences in his land if he does. He has destroyed us long enough and we will not allow this destruction to continue any further. So the next question is, when Africa unite, will it look like a big Europe? What does an African city look like today? Will we develop a space program? Do we get rid of cars that pollute and congest the environment? Do we produce and wear our own clothes? Do we get natural food from the market or processed food from the supermarket? Will the greedy and wicked European with his nuclear weapons allow us to live in peace in a natural society of our design or will they threaten us? Can they stay away, knowing that the raw materials they need is in our homeland? Would we have to develop our own nuclear weapons program to protect us from our former colonial masters, who we know has only one intention, and that is to rob and kill wherever he goes? Without a nuclear or similar program, we will have to develop a computer hacking system that allows us to tell any aggressor that if you fire one computer-controlled weapon at us, we will hack into it, take over the controls, and command it to return to sender. It will come back to you. If they send their troops, we can handle them. White people are weak, and even weaker without air power, especially in the lands of those they seek to rob and kill. When we have one of those systems in place or some other type of deterrent, we would then be free and independent to develop and invent a new system of governance or use one of ours from a previous time. We would then embark on a massive developmental program of inventions, knowing full well we can protect and secure them from invaders. What's the point in building developmental systems if we can't defend them from these white folks who have remained on a weapons building program from day one to sustain their criminal activities of robbing and killing at home and abroad? We have to be able to tell any aggressor to leave town and not worry about what they can do. At this time, we will rename our cities, towns and villages, our roads, our community centers and our parks. We will rename our waterfalls and our mountains, even our plants and animals. But most importantly, we will be free to make one of our many languages official. So, to the black people in Africa and to the African leaders of today, recent history has clearly shown us in our lifetime that white people are still robbers and killers. And since our so-called independence, they have revised and cleaned up their racial imagery somewhat. But the core of their mentality, which is contained within their polluted DNA, that remains the same for each generation. That has not changed. White folks have taken every effort to secure themselves legally and otherwise by setting up the so-called International Criminal Court in The Hague. Only Africans have been charged, even though genocide and other crimes have been committed by white soldiers and their Arab accomplices in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Egypt, in Yemen and other places. Obviously, white folks and their Arab lackeys are immune to this court. Today, the white man and woman remains a savage. They remain a savage to every life form on earth. They are just as brutal and deadly in their intentions and in their actions as they ever was. But they can only do this wickedness to those who cannot defend themselves. This continent now called Africa, our continent now called Africa, must be able to defend itself against any aggressor from Europe. Look at Pakistan, little Pakistan. If they can have a nuclear bomb, what about the rest of Africa? The leaders of Iraq and Libya were threatened by white people in the West to give up their nuclear bomb. They did, and look what happened to them. Both countries were attacked and both leaders were killed. North Korea was also threatened by these same white Western aggressors and told the same thing. However, the leader, he was a wise man. He told them to go jump off a bridge. It's been years now, and North Korean cities and its people have never been attacked and destroyed like Iraq and Libya. Its leader, he's still alive. So, Kushite people in the land of what is now called Africa, let's rejoin our countries one at a time using the Rastafari philosophy of I and I. This philosophy was gloriously created in Jamaica from roots that extended all the way from Africa. This solution is appropriate. And remember, after each joining, we become bigger and bigger. And bigger is better in this case. And at the first togetherness celebration, an ancient African spiritual element would also be called upon, reintroduced, and thanked for our success. This ancient spiritual entity would also act and be promoted as a counter-offensive to Turkish Islam and Western Christianity. From this position of size, strength, power, and mentality, the next leader who is approached will have no choice but to join this organization for African unity. The people will merge. They are the same people. Leaders will join because they see the regional benefits, or join out of fear of losing those personal benefits they presently enjoy with their families. One way or another, every country must be a member of this growing force to unify and defend the continent for the betterment of the indigenous black people. Ashe.
Black power! 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 Black power!